I'm proudly the Director of Elder Affairs for the center and for the town. My job is to take care of seniors. That is what my job is to help the community understand how vibrant they really are. I take advocacy extremely serious, and I think having the opportunity, honestly, in a given day, one moment being in a Valentine's Day dance with them, literally doing the electric slide with them, eating cake, laughing, and in the next moment, making sure that their needs are met, making sure that the funding is here. I get to mix business with pleasure. And to me, that is the ultimate job. We were notified the day of from our town that our doors would be closing. All municipal buildings closed. And between March and May, it became a command center, almost like a military command center. We utilized Zoom, which was a new concept for all of us. That's how we engaged with staff. That's how we started to engage with community members and community businesses to come together. How are we going to fix this? We can't fix COVID. How are we going to ensure that our senior needs are met? We are not a council on aging. We counsel, but not on aging. We counsel on living.
When my husband and I got married, we chose Plymouth because he was working in Hyannis and I was working out of Waltham. And we looked at a map and said, okay, that's doable. Bought a house in West Plymouth and we're still in that house. And our children were raised in that house. And my husband will literally die in that house because he's on hospice now. So it's a full circle of life in that house for us. It started with cancer diagnosis in 2012, a type of cancer that doesn't go away, so at best it can be put in maintenance where the cancer is not attacking the body. It's multiple myeloma, blood cancer. And after a year plus of preparation and then stem cell transplant and then recovery, the cancer did get in maintenance for many years, and we traveled and he barbecued and washed cars and retired and made dinner and did my shopping. It was great. Through this pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, he was in maintenance, and what was fun was our older daughter, who lives in Jersey City, works in Manhattan. Her office, before the pandemic was even, before it was the week or two before, everybody was like, oh my God. Her office heard about it and said, everybody just plan to work from home for the next couple of weeks and then we'll see what happens. And so she went home and packed up a suitcase and her laptop and said, well, I'll go work out of my folks' home. And so she's been with us pretty much since March. That's been one of the many wonderful things about the pandemic, that we've been able to spend a lot of time together. The way I look at the pandemic and everything else, it's like, yeah, there's all this, it is what it is. I'm not a realist about all the disaster and the deaths and the this and the that. But for everything, I'm always, but there's also this. So, there's that big list of negatives, but let's also look at the positives. And one doesn't erase the other. They're both there. It's just, I choose to focus on the positives. It doesn't mean I'm ignoring the negatives. Maybe in a way I am, but I recognize them, but focus on the positives. And thank heavens we have technology. Zoom is terrific. I have, 20 women that we get together on Zoom and share what's going on in our lives and this and that, maybe once a year I would go out, be able to meet for a cup of coffee or see in a crowd or something. But this way, with technology, with emails, with FaceTime, we're communicating with so many people these days all the time. And so that's a positive of the pandemic.
When this virus hit and everything hit, I guess because of my struggles early on and things that I've gone through, I didn't feel like it was the most devastating thing. I felt sad about it because so many people have died and you can die from it. That part, but I think that if you wear your mask and you do what you're supposed to do, and had we known earlier, perhaps, I think that would have made the difference too. I don't think as many people would have died. There are more challenging times I find now with everything that's going on in the world. Today, especially one of the things that I'm hit hard with is the racism. And that's very, very difficult for me because I think for the most part, I just looked at everybody the same. I don't care if you were gay or transgender or black or white or pink or green or whatever. I just looked at everybody for what they offered me in conversation or their politeness. And sometimes somebody could be very quirky the way they dressed. Somebody could wear glasses or not wear glasses or whatever the case, the difference is. But if you sat with me and you talked with me and we could share something, the racism thing is, I'm so puzzled by it because I can't understand how you would, it's very difficult to understand how you say because a person is different in color or the way they dress or if they're gay or whatever. I don't understand about everything about being gay. I don't, because I'm married and to the opposite. But I still have respect for who you love and care for. It is not for me to judge. It is not for me to judge. So I think when somebody says something along with the racism thing, I go, but how could you possibly, well, you're different, Betty. You're very different. How am I different? Tell me how I'm different. Well, maybe you don't talk so loud or you don't go, yo, what up and all that. But I have lots of brown and black people that don't say yo, what up or are respectful or don't play rap. I don't particularly like rap. Some people like rap. I will respect, long as it's not blaring in my ear. I respect. A lot of the kids love rap. Some of the language in it, I'm not so happy about. But I think that the racism thing has been very difficult for me. One area of my life that I hope for the future, that I can sit down and have a conversation with somebody who is different, whether the color of their skin, or their gender or whatever, that I can sit and communicate and say, I respect your opinion. You can have an opinion, but I respectfully disagree with you. And that's what I'm hoping for the future.
To be real honest, nothing has been like this. Being told not to have contact with people. I tend to be a hugger, and that's so alien to me. At first we weren't even doing the elbows anymore, and now I guess that's okay. It still feels strange that when I deliver Meals on Wheels, I can't go into people's homes. I very often would walk into the kitchen and, put the meal on the table or in some cases put it in the fridge for them, and not having that contact has been miserable. But other times, oh boy, have been other times in my life that there were awful things going on. I mean, in the 60s with the assassinations that occurred, John and then Robert Kennedy and then Martin Luther King Jr. and then the Vietnam War. And, I still vividly remember the news reports every night on TV and the body count. They actually announced it every night, kind of the way we do now with how many new cases of COVID there are, in the state and how many people have died and that kind of stuff. It went on for too long. So those were traumatic times, but like I said, I don't think anything compares to what's going on now. doing the Meals on Wheels, gets me out of the house 2 mornings a week and gives Judy some personal time without me, hanging around, since we're both retired and home all day. And before, it was very personal. And I mean, we got to know, we would have the same route. Occasionally we would fill in other routes, but we'd have basically the same route, and which I still do have. And I mean, I've lost people, and that's a couple of times have been pretty traumatic, because I didn't even realize that, I guess, that they were as sick as they were. But beforehand, it was, like I said, it was, knocking on the door, having somebody come to the door, always a big smile. We were the only person they see each day, and it was 5 days a week. I was doing it 3 and sometimes 4 days a week. Now we're doing it only 2 days a week, and folks are getting the same number of meals, but it was to cut down on the possibility of spreading the virus. But it's less personal because they can't see my smile. And I try to express it with my eyes, and sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. And as I said, it was going into the house, helping out with little things. There was a woman that I still deliver to who, she's in her 90s and always had trouble opening jars. So she would leave a jar of something on the kitchen table for me to open for her. I mean, her family was nearby and they were there all the time, but if she wanted something before they, were going to come by. And other people just want to just stop and talk, So a route that really should have only taken maybe 2 hours takes me 3, sometimes longer, because as you can tell now, I took after my mother and not my father, and I'm the talkative one, and I enjoy that, and they seem to, even if it's just, how's it going today, how you feeling, what's going on, what's the weather forecast, and it's there's still the amount of time, but it just doesn't feel as comfortable for any of us, and to be doing it now. We're all, I think, anxious to go back to the 5 days a week deliveries, and so that these people get to see somebody, and it keeps the interaction, more personal if you see somebody more often, I think.
Alex was, he was my third child. He was the baby. He was 10 years younger than my daughter and 5 years younger than my other son. He died of a drug OD. He had struggled with opioids for a while. Since Alex's death, I mostly just write letters to him. They encompass a lot of things, sort of memories of him. I want him remembered, and I want people to know who he was, that he wasn't just some drug addict. What I've been doing, I write them and I put them away. I don't reread them. They're written in the moment, and so what I've been doing is rereading them, and I'm up rereading and editing a little bit, So I'm up to number 50, and I read them to my therapist. And she's really the only one I read them to. Although I do share a few with my kids, and with close friends. The goal is to hopefully be able to publish this at some point as a sort of memoir, creative writing, story, semi-biography. It encompasses a lot of genres. So that's, yeah, so I've written 129 letters. I've lived alone for almost 20 years, so for me, I'm not used to, it hasn't been that bad for me, per se. The worst things are I have some dear friends, and prior to COVID-19, prior to March, we got one friend, Paula, a retired nurse. She and I would go out to lunch once a week and then to the Plymouth Plantation movies, to the matinees. So that was once a week, almost regularly for years. And my other friend, Patty, who is a very special friend, she and I used to go to Aroma, which is a restaurant in Manomet, and play Keno, and that was once or twice a month. So those are the things I miss the most. In terms of people who are shut-ins and, can't go anywhere, and my friend Doris has a lot of company and a lot of people come to see her, so she's still very socially active. But if those people weren't in her life, she would be very isolated. I met her over a year ago. My son died on September 10th of 2018. In August of 2018, we had a sort of very serendipitous family reunion. About 10 months later, I was introduced to Doris. I felt like it was the universe sending her to me following my son's death. Just having her become a part of my life unexpectedly, following the unexpected death of my son, has provided me with hope and, good things.
Came here at 15 for vacation. That was for 6 weeks. Went back to England. Came back at 17. I worked at Honeywell. And then I met my to-be husband at that point. Went back to England, I think, at 18 almost. Then he went over to visit me. Then we decided we'd get married. Came back here at 19. Got married at 19. He was 20. So then I had 2 kids, and now I got 5 grandchildren. We've been keeping in touch pretty well on the phone, and I do see my kids. The face coverings are sometimes not so much. When this pandemic began, they were all very, very good about that. And my son has 2 small boys, and they didn't even buy food. They had food delivered, and they didn't even leave the house. And the 2 kids had to stand in the driveway and yell across the street to their friends because they weren't allowed to mix. Now, they're playing in each other's house because they're across, and they stick to they call it the bubble, right? Yeah. So, yeah, and I think sometimes my kids probably waver about what they think about the pandemic. Very serious in the beginning, and then I think they started to question about what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, that kind of thing. So I keep saying to them, you're just got to do what you think on your own. I couldn't compare this to anything. Even when think about the war in England, and my parents and all my friends' parents all had stories, and they would say, even though it was hard times and very difficult, you all joined together and you helped each other out. And they even had some good times, really. Stories and things like that, But I couldn't compare this to that, because at least here we are, we can move around, we've got food. In England, the food was rationed and people had ration books. And yeah, my aunt that stayed in England with my mother from when they all left Ireland, she came to visit here, and inside her handbag was a ration book from the UK. She always kept it with her. But you were only allowed to have once a week so much flour, so much tea, things like that. So, and housing, there was no housing after the war, so my mother was pregnant and had to move in with her in-laws and her brother-in-law and her sister-in-law. Sister-in-law was pregnant with twins, so they were all cramped in a house, yeah. So, very hard times. My dad, I'd say. To have peace of mind and money isn't everything, he used to say, yeah. He grew up very poor. You know, they grew up in the war, my parents, so the bombs were dropping, which we can not even imagine, relate to that. But yeah, he had a rough childhood. His father died, and his mother had 5 kids to raise, and then his brother was killed in the war. But he just said, you know, he had 1 pair of shoes, and if you got a hole in them and it rained, you put cardboard in the shoe. And he was just a very simple man, and very happy just to have a roof over his head and food on the table. I think with age, that you get to a certain place where you find a certain contentment and an appreciation, I think, of things more. When you're young, you don't, because you're so busy with kids and whatnot, you don't take the time to really appreciate all that, yeah. And one thing I think is nice for me that I see is how I raise my kids. Is nice to see how they're raising their kids in the same way, the same values. And that's a comfort, I think, when you're older.
Both daughters have been subjected, unfortunately, to respiratory issues. And this came before COVID. So the daughter in New Hampshire has really struggled. She had to give up teaching. She was in 20-odd years of teaching, and she had to sacrifice a chunk of a pension, which was absolute nonsense as far as I'm concerned. They should have given it to her. And she just had to stop, and as a result of it, because of the sensitivity levels that she has, we meet them halfway between, they're in Bedford, New Hampshire, we're here. So we go off to 495 and meet at exit 20 in the back of a Courtyard Marriott in a parking lot, fully masked about 20 feet. I think seeing the pain of your kids go through this, that's tough. And seeing the pain of a Courtyard Marriott with an empty lot, you see all these people who have invested their lives in business. And recently, in helping my other daughter, this one nearly died 3 times from anaphylaxis. She went into anaphylaxis shock. And if you want to talk about stress, that's stress. And when she went into anaphylaxis shock about 15 years ago, for the 3rd time I'm holding her hand, and she's totally out of it. You don't know if they're gonna make it. So finally she woke up, looked at me and said, I'm gonna start a business. I figured she was either hallucinating or, I don't know, maybe something's happening, an epiphany. So I said, whatever it is, I'm gonna go along with it. So I said, well, I'm gonna help you, I'll help you start the business, because that's kind of what I do. So now 14 years later, she's working with over 500,000 kids. I think she's reached over 20 countries abroad. And it's in the green space. It's getting kids to think environmentally. It's STEM, which is, basically getting the kids to think in terms of technology, the engineering, math, and these social areas. So it's been quite a climb, and then I helped her. We put together a golf tournament. I'm over at White Cliffs, so we played at White Cliffs, and we did everything conforming to COVID, 6 feet apart, and we had a maximum of 48 people, which is all that would be allowed under the tent. Everyone had a great time because everyone has been so down and depressed and whatever, and to get out and have fun. which is really why we're here. Have fun and learn. When you say experience, experience means something different to a lot of people. People can be have 80 years of no experience at all. I've met people who are elderly, who are very much alive, and whether they're well physically or not, they're just very much alive. It's in their spirit. And yet I've met some youth of, like my cousin Vinny with the youth, who basically could be 18 or 20 years old, but they seem dead to me. They just can't seem to let go of where they're at to expand into a different place. And that to me is like death. So life to me is to be out, active, living, learning, helping people with the good bit, the bad, the ugly, the whole bit.
Seniors in our town should be celebrated. COVID or no COVID, they are our forefathers, if you will, and mothers. Their wisdom should be heard. Their voices should be heard.
Yeah, everybody bears a cross. I mean, that's the bottom line. And that's why you really, really have to be kind to everyone you meet, because you don't know where they're coming from, and you don't know what's happening in their lives. And you really have to try to not be judgmental. I mean, if someone's really curt with you or seems to be nasty, sometimes you just have to let it slide down your back, because you don't know where they've been, and you don't know what's going on in their lives. You don't have privy to that.
All of it is for a purpose for us to learn. So if somebody is struggling, what they should do is not look outside, but they should look inside and say, why am I struggling? What is it about me that is responding improperly to what's going on today? And how can I actually not only get through it, but learn from it, so that in the event of episode number 2, I'll be ready and I won't be depressed. Find meaning in your life.
This was our journey together. This is their center. So they helped us, they gave us words of wisdom, and here we are. We feel pretty good about it.
You have to be resilient, and that all bad things will come to an end. Think positive. Do things that you can do so your mind isn't on that, the COVID all the time. And you know yourself, really, and better than anybody else, and what you're capable of. And we are really stronger than I think we are, right? So, trust your instincts. I think it's a big thing. And it will all come to an end.
Remember to respect people, differences. Remember, if you have a partner in life, to respect them. Disagree with them you might, but please respect. That's the ultimate thing.
This is an experience none of us have had, but I think about my parents, and they lived through world wars, and there are always going to be challenges of different sorts. It's a matter of just do the best you can. And I don't know, I would not even try to advise these young people who are building a new world. Let them think of it in terms of, it's not what they're missing, but it's what are they doing with what they have.
If you love your work, then you don't have a job. You just do what you love every day. And I believe that. So if you can make a living at what makes you happy, go for it, and keep connected with friends and family, especially family. Sometimes you drift away for a while, and then you realize you need them, and that's important.
I utilized my senior center to make a one call to seniors several times a week. 10,000 patrons received that call. And it was kind of like, seniors used to tell me it was kind of like Roosevelt fireside chats, in which they would just hear the voice. And I didn't know what to say except what I felt in my heart, which was, we'll be okay. We'll get through this. We are here for you. We're not leaving you. And so the Center for Active Living is about our Plymouth seniors and how engaged they are in our community, how engaged they are with each other, the wisdom that they bring, the energy, mind, body, spirit. That is what this center is about.